We are Dave. That's Dave. I'm Brittany.
Yeah, let's not confuse that. We don't want to throw them off right from episode 1, right?
All right. So we are Brittany and Dave Fox, and we started Focus GTS just about 7 years ago, 2018. We are an IT staffing company that specializes in the placement of MarTech talent, mostly in the Adobe Marketing Cloud and also in the AI space. Before it was cool. 7 years ago, we started building out IT, AI tech teams. And here we are 7 years later.
Here we are 7 years later. Yep, episode 1. But the journey wasn't this simple. Actually, it started off in a very interesting way. I was doing very well at the company I was at, as you know, and was approached by LinkedIn message by a guy who said, hey, I have started several staffing and recruiting companies in Europe. I'm moving here into the United States. I'm looking for a partner. I've heard great things about you. And I was so skeptical. Do you remember when I first came and talked to you about this?
Yeah.
I was so skeptical. I was like, no, I'm good. But I always had that entrepreneur itch deep inside. And I was like, this is interesting. And through multiple LinkedIn messages, just like you and I do to people on a regular basis, I slowly came around, and then I had a conversation, then I had another conversation, then we were on Skype. Is that still a thing? Do people use Skype anymore?
I don't think so.
I know, it's like Zoom now, which is kind of weird because in 2017, when this was all going down, like, it's not weird now that you had a video with someone, but I never met this guy in person, and I decided that I was going to do it. I quit my job in November of 2017, was all excited. I had the guy who knew how to do everything, and then December, he comes to visit in person. And within about 5 minutes, I had this like feeling that I was just like, this guy's not the right partner for me. And there was evidence behind it too. And interestingly enough, I didn't tell you because Brittany was up in New York City closing a real estate deal because that's what she does. She's a hustler. So she's up in New York, and I'm like, I'm not going to tell Britt when she gets back about this guy at all because I was worried that maybe I was having, some apprehension. Butterflies, all that stuff. And I wanted, the woman's intuition. So I was like, I'm not going to tell her a thing. And within about 2 minutes
or less
of her getting in the car and meeting this individual, she's like, there's no way you're working with him. So here we were. I quit my job. It was December. And I wasn't going to be the guy that was like crawling back to my old company and was like, listen, I made a mistake. I don't know what I was doing. So you and I started Focus GTS in the second bedroom of our condo. Why don't you tell them a little bit more about that, Britt?
Yeah, so we started our company in the second bedroom of our condo, not knowing anything of what we were doing. Dave had the expertise in recruiting. I mean, that's what he'd been doing for the past 7 years before that. And he was the global top biller at one of the largest staffing companies. So he really was specialized in that. But neither of us had run a business before. I did real estate in Manhattan before. I worked in one of the top 10 teams in the city. We sold $650 million of real estate, just 3 of us, over the past 3 years before I had left. And we had always compared our job as very similar. Buyer, seller, candidate, client. So we always talked about sales, how to improve, how to get better, how to negotiate more. And so we knew that we were really great at that. But once we launched our company, we realized we have a lot of other skill sets we need to learn. So we did what we knew best. We started selling from the beginning. And we launched our company in Miami. And we said instantly that if we could get one of the cruise lines as a client, that would be a game changer for us. So that was one of our top goals from starting the company right away. And I think it was within 6 weeks, we had a meeting with the director of AI at one of the biggest cruise companies here in Miami. And I remember Dave was on the call with me because I had booked the meeting through LinkedIn. And he asked us, well, how do you guys recruit AI talent? Or how do you have a pipeline, I think was the question. We were like, yeah, we know people here in AI or something. We came up with something witty.
I don't know how we answered that question. He also asked, he was like, how big is your company? It's me and her sitting in the second bedroom of our condo. I'm like, it's a good size. It's a pretty good size. And luckily he didn't probe on that one. We could just leave it there. Because to me, it was a good size, great size.
Yeah. So we ended up booking that meeting, going down to their corporate headquarters. And I remember we still have a photo from when we left that meeting, how great we felt because we felt like we were going to bring them in. And we did it within a couple of months. We had a signed contract. We were doing our first placement at the cruise line.
Yeah.
And then I think it was about within 6 months, we realized, okay, now that we have sales coming in, we have revenue being generated, we need to work on some other skill set. We had hired our first couple people. They were coming to the second bedroom of our condo.
Yeah.
Our door people were, kind of getting a little suspicious of what was going on.
Yeah, they're like, how come people are going up there and coming down really happy every day around the end of the day? What's going on in that place?
And so we realized, though, and I think we started doing research before ChatGPT was around on the good old-fashioned Google about how to run a business. Because we realized there was other things we needed to learn, right? So
Yep.
Dave, tell them, what did you find on the Google?
So I was on Google, how to run a business, and like often happens, boom, an ad hits me from Tony Robbins' Business Mastery. And what's so interesting? You have these profound moments in your life and your journey as an entrepreneur. And this was one of the ones that was really game changing for both of us. Because when we're starting out, they bring you through their whole sales process. They call you up. They're like, we only have a certain number of seats of people that can come to this event. Not true. You can go if you want to, as long as you pay the fee. And, it was a lot of money at the time. What were we looking at?
It was like 10 grand.
It was about $10,000
for the tickets,
for
plus
the
flight,
tickets
hotel.
to go to this event in Vegas, plus the flights, plus the hotel. Now, we had already been in a phase in our life where we were starting to embrace personal development, which I think is so important as an entrepreneur. But we were in this, we were in this place where it was like, we can either spend money to get the knowledge that we do not have, or we can learn the really hard way by just trying to figure everything out, on our own. And we chose to invest the $10,000, and next thing we know, we're jumping around with a bunch of people in Vegas.
Yeah, the first day at the conference was definitely nothing like we expected. I think I was probably pretty bug-eyed. People are hugging people, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is a business conference, and I don't like hugs from strangers.
Is this
Number
a
two.
cult?
Yeah, we were a little like, whoa, this is a lot, but we ended up joining the cult, if you will.
If you go to a personal development conference and you are not wondering if it's a cult, you're not at the right one. Let's just say it like that.
So we drank the Kool-Aid, and I remember Tony Robbins talked about how one of the most important things is who you surround yourself with and being surrounded by who you want to become. And the top 5 people have the most influence that you hang out with will directly influence your life. So, and I remember at the time, like, we had just come to a new city, we didn't know a ton of people, and our friends, like, they weren't running businesses at the time.
Yeah.
So we realized we needed to get around some other people. So he talked about this amazing group that he had. It's a year-long program where you travel, you learn about business, you learn about life, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. We're bought in. And then we realized it was $85,000 a person. So we realized, yeah, we need to go make some more money in our business first before we do this.
Definitely.
But we made it a goal, and we eventually did join that program, both of us, and it really transformed our whole life. But I think one of the biggest takeaways here from this story is that if you are in business, 80% of it is your psychology, and the other 20% is your strategy. And nowadays, there is enough strategy to figure out any problem, especially with AI. You can solve any problem. You can talk to ChatGPT to come up with any ideas that you need, but only you can work on yourself and your mindset.
You can only work on your mindset. And the thing that's crazy is, I still remember that first Tony Robbins event we went to. And he gets up on the board, it might have been the second day, and he's writing these 3 words: state, story, and strategy. And he's talking about the exact same thing you're saying, is there's an abundance of strategy out there, right? Like if you're looking to put on muscle, you just go on Google and you're gonna find a ton of ways to put on muscle. But the problem is, oftentimes it's a story that we're telling ourselves about the problem that we have. So, it's like, oh, I'm not a person that puts on muscle easily or anything. But this was the biggest key. It's the state, right? It's the state of mind that you're in when you tell yourself a story. You want to tell yourself an empowering story from a strong state of mind, and you'll always figure out the strategy. So you can know what the strategy is, but you're not going to execute on it if you're giving yourself a crappy story and you're not in the right state of mind. And that was so powerful.
Yeah, and I think getting around the right people, back to what he was talking about, is really a game changer. And one thing about our business, I didn't even know that this was an option when we launched our company, that you could actually raise money to build your business. But you and I, we bootstrapped everything.
Yeah.
And recruitment is a massive cash flow business. And I had no idea about this at the time. I was definitely not the finance person in this launching of the company.
Yeah.
Thank God Dave had a finance degree and we were able to figure that out. But it's a massive cash flow business, and getting around the right people who understand and being able to most people, when they launch a business that are entrepreneurs, they have their board of advisors. They have the advisors because they've either taken VC money, they've taken private equity, and they have this board, but you and I didn't have that. So we realized that we had to create it ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And that was another real key for us, realizing that we needed a board of advisors and then finding the strategic people to get on there. And you know, that Tony Robbins event, that was a first key pivotal moment for us in the business. But there's been so many since then.
Yeah.
What do you think were some of the other ones that came soon after that?
Yeah, so we came back from the conference. We're super jazzed up. We have so many ideas. We met so many amazing people who
Created the chant.
Yeah, we created a chant that we do still to this day every single morning with our team. We go through a chant, we jump up and down, get in a peak state before we...
That was all from that business mastery.
Yeah, and so we still do that today, but I think we came back, and of course you get back and you're like, oh my gosh, now you have to execute, right?
Yeah.
Like you can learn a lot of great knowledge, and there's so much knowledge out there today, but if you don't execute on what you've learned, then it's absolutely useless.
Yeah.
So I think we came back and we realized we needed to make some decisions. We needed to execute on strategy. And what we did was, shortly after that was when we got our first office space.
Yes.
And we had been working, as you know, at the second bedroom of our condo. We had 5 people, and it was like, okay, it's time to get an office space. So we started with a co-working space.
Yeah.
And we started hiring some more people and really focusing on the strategy of what we had learned.
Yeah.
And I think that was all within our first year of business.
It was always in our first year. And then I remember when we signed the lease, this is when things really got serious for me. We found a office in Miami, and I always like nice things. I don't know. There's something about walking into a nice environment, but oftentimes that can be out of the price range of new entrepreneurs, especially in a cash flow sucking business, right? So, you know, we looked at some places and they're like, you're going to have to put a couple $100,000 of renovations in here. And we're just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, we'll just keep working out of our Regis co-working space,
Yeah.
right? But we found this one place where they would build out the entire office for you to your exact specifications. And that was exciting because now we were starting to have an idea of what we want. And it's hard to find that in a lot of offices because you need the open sales floor so that your salespeople can feel the excitement, the energy, all that stuff, which is interesting because we don't even have an office now, but that's another story. But the moment that we sat there and we agreed on the layout and we sat there and signed this document that's like $600,000 personal guaranteed of rent over 5 years, that was an exciting but scary moment.
Yeah.
And I remember the weight of putting that pen on that signature and being like, okay, this is like legit now. We have a $12,000 office expense every month.
Yeah, I remember that moment very clear. And I remember too, I don't think if we wouldn't have gone to that conference and learned about psychology, Tony talks about burning the bridge, right? Like you're 100% in, you're going absolutely in on whatever it is that you're committed to, and you're gonna find a way.
Yeah.
And I knew that we would find a way, that if something went rogue, that we would pivot, we would figure it out. And that's always been a big motto of our personal life and also our business. And is that we always find a way.
Always.
Like always find a way. It doesn't matter what the situation is. And so oftentimes the entrepreneurs' values affect the culture directly, and that is absolutely core to our success. Is we always find a way, is that we don't make excuses, that we figure out whatever it is that is going on. So we get this beautiful office, absolutely gorgeous. We start hiring people. We are up to, I don't know what year we're on right now, but
before 2020, probably like 2019.
Yeah.
We were almost at 20 people.
Yeah, 2019, we have this beautiful office. We have about 20 people coming into the space, and then of course,
COVID hits.
Yeah.
Now, one key point about this, we mentioned that group that we wanted to get in for Tony Robbins' event, his Platinum Partnership, that was quite expensive. So 2019, the business did well, and we were in a position for the first time where we were like, we could take some money out of this business, or We go to UPW, remember, in that in the stadium, the American Airlines Arena, and we're in this event. We're like, you know what? Let's do this. And we decided to invest in ourselves, which has been our ultimate best investment that we've ever made. And we made a big investment, but we knew it was going to yield great results and put us around the right people and teach us so many things. And we are so lucky that we did, because when you're part of Tony Robbins' Platinum Group, he has 3 events that he does. And the first one is called Platinum Finance. And this is super cool. You go to Sun Valley, Idaho, where you ski and stuff, but he brings in a bunch of billionaires that speak to you about what they think is going to happen in the economy, in the stock market, all these things that are going to happen, investments, where you should be putting your money. So it's really about financial strategies for both personally and the business. But what's so interesting about this is this was in February of 2020, and one guy of all the guests that he had brought up COVID, but he didn't really talk about the impact that it was going to have, at least not the impact that it did have. And boom, recession hits. We come back from that event, and literally it's like 3 weeks later, they're shutting down the entire country. And I'd never been in a recession in this business, because I started in this business in 2010. The prior recession to that was 2008. And I remember hearing all these stories of people who are in recruitment and the horror stories, what they went through during these recessionary periods. And we were so lucky that we had followed through on that, joining that group, because the very first thing that happened was all of those people that were in Tony's group got pulled onto this call, and he's like, this is how you survive this. This is the moves that you need to make. These are the government programs that are available to you. This is how you take advantage of them. This is who you want to be talking. And he just like dumped all this info on us so early in the thing. It was like the first week, nobody really knew what was going on, and we executed on those decisions, and we made it through our first recession perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting pivotal moment, I think, in so many people's lives, right? But for us, we were very heavily concentrated in one of the cruise lines, and I knew that we were talking about how to diversify our client portfolio. We're like, what if something ever happened to one of the cruise lines? Yeah. You know, how would that impact our business? And of course, that impacted our business because of COVID. They let go of everyone that they had hired from us.
Every contractor
we had. So that was a really scary moment, and we had to make some really tough decisions in our business. And then looking at the opportunity, though, I think whenever there is great recession or problems, there's always massive opportunity right in front of you. So the quicker you can learn the lesson, see the opportunity, and start making hard decisions, I think that's something that a lot of, especially new entrepreneurs, struggle with, is not making the hard decisions fast enough, because we get our emotions involved. We're dealing with people, and it's harder to make those decisions, but you have to think of your business and the employees that will still be there. So we make some hard decisions. We lose the cruise line, which is our second biggest client at the time. I mean, we're talking several $1 million in revenue of what this client has generated, gone in an instant. Literally, they actually, I think, took you guys out to a dinner. And then
I remember that was a nice dinner at Komodo.
Yeah,
we went to Komodo here in Miami.
You had to pay for yourself because
we paid for it.
They were not doing so well considering all of that. And then the opportunity hit, though. We started picking up clients that they were booming during this time because their online business started taking off. So we pivoted, we focused on business development, and we gained new clients, and we were able to stay flat that year. So I think that was a huge accomplishment. I remember the board our advisory board talking to us about, you know, we did a really great job that year managing what we had and seizing the opportunity. So I think just the advice to entrepreneurs out there is, when you're facing a hard time, is to see what is the opportunity right in front of me that I might be missing. What hard decisions do I need to make now that I know I probably need to make, but I'm hesitating for whatever reason?
Yeah. And it's interesting what you said about opportunity there, because I heard a great quote the other day. It was talking about how opportunity is always going to look like risk when it's opportunity. And once it's not looking risky anymore, the opportunity is gone. But that's the reason that we play this game of entrepreneurship, because we love taking risks and we love the reward that has. And we know that some we're going to win and some we're going to lose. But that's just the name of the game if you want to be an entrepreneur. And I tell people all the time that if you are stressed out working as an employee, don't become an entrepreneur, because Your level of success as an entrepreneur is directly correlated to how much of that stress you can handle. And you have to be able to take more and more and more and more. You look at someone like Elon, who just won this 50-something billion dollar dispute that he was having with Tesla. And it's like, the problems we're dealing with is losing a $2 million client, and he's dealing with a $56 billion problem, right? Mm-hmm. That's a much higher level of stress than what we're dealing with. But because he's able to deal with that, that's why he's in that type of position.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. This made me think that recruitment, we always say, is an emotional roller coaster, right? Like the highs are really high, the lows are really low. But not only in our industry, it's also as entrepreneurs. It's like the same thing. Like the highs are really high, the lows are really low. But your ability to be consistent and constant during those times is absolutely crucial to success, because you can't let the emotional roller coasters affect you. As they go up and down, you just got to stay consistent the whole time.
Yeah.
And doing all the things that you know to do. And I think that's why too we have been so successful in our business, is that we don't let our habits die when things are hard.
Yeah.
We continue to work on our mindset constantly. Since our first investment of Tony Robbins, we've done so many other things since then to invest back in our mindset.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people might think that they learned something, or now they know enough that they don't need to invest back in themselves. They can now invest it in other areas of their business. But I think the one that you constantly got to keep is in yourself, because your company can only grow to the ability of your skill set, of your level, of what you're able to handle.
Yeah.
So to truly get to the next level is all about the entrepreneur's mindset.
Yeah, and mindset, 100%. Every single time we have a problem in the business, I'm always like, okay, got to go back to basics, got to go back to the mindset. How are you thinking about this problem? Because so much of it is how you think about things. And so often we're like, how do I solve it? How do I solve it? How do I solve this? And this is another thing that we learned from Tony's stuff. It's like, he calls it the tyranny of how. Our mind just goes to how, and it should be like, what is the outcome I want, and why do I want it? With that, interestingly enough, talking about the mindset, we really needed it in the next couple of years, because 2021, coming out of COVID, staffing did really good, and so did we. We put, we invested, we were beneficiaries of a lot of the COVID programs that help small businesses. So it was really a good time that it was coming back. But 2022 was an interesting year for us. And I remember at one of those Tony Robbins events, him talking about how you could grow your revenue of your company, but you could actually lose profit. And I was like, I don't know how that's possible. Like, I've been doing this a while. I don't think the math works on that.
What kind of idiot would you have to be?
What type of idiot would you have to be for that to happen? And boom, 2022 hits, and we actually lost money.
Yep.
For the first time in business. And it was a difficult year for us, because we'd also adopted our son that year, so there's a lot going on. But we've analyzed it to really try to figure out, how do we make sure this never happens again? And I think for us, the biggest thing was just the learning curve of making some bad investments. And primarily when you're investing as a business owner, you're investing in people. And for us, we invested too heavily in the wrong areas with people, I think. What do you think was the biggest driver to that year?
Yeah, I think 2022 was our most challenging year for so many reasons. We were definitely investing a ton back into the business, and we were on growth mode, which I think a lot of businesses, startups were out of COVID. And if they had success, that they were, and even like the VC world, like they were investing so heavily in companies that it was growth at all cost. And I think that is just, I listen to a ton of podcasts as well. And so just like hearing that, it's like growth, like you gotta grow as entrepreneurs, like that's what you measure success is by your growth. And well, like the growth caught up to us because we didn't have all of the foundations in place to have the success of the growth. Yeah. And like you mentioned, we made some really bad hires. We also made the same type of hire over and over. This is one of my biggest lessons, is that we weren't clear. We were clear on what we wanted, but we weren't aligning to what that would actually look like, as far as like we kept hiring the same type of salesperson when we we should have been hiring a more strategic selling person.
Yeah.
But we were looking at how could we train people ourselves? We can teach people. Well, that's a much bigger investment to train people yourself than bring in someone who's already a skilled person. Now, there also comes the downside of that. You know, they are more set in their ways, but you know, it's a different cost that you need to weigh out. And I think we were just on this path of we're going to train everyone ourselves. We're going to build this thing from the ground up, and we really had. But I think we needed to shift sooner to how can we hire people who've been here before us so that we don't make these mistakes sooner. And I think it was one of the biggest lessons that we learned. And so we're part of the American Staffing Association, which is one of the largest networks within staffing. And it was, I believe, in 2022 that I joined this program, and it matched you with a mentor. You did it as well. You didn't have as much success as I did with mine, but I got matched to a mentor who had been in staffing for 30 years. And I remember after, I think it was my first or second conversation with her, I told Dave, I said, if we could get Kimberly to come work with us, that would be a game changer. It was just like the craziest thought that I had, but I realized this was a gap that was missing. Someone who had been here way more experienced than us and could take us where we want to go even faster instead of us hiring salespeople and training them up over and over. And that was, we had developed a relationship. She was my mentor for almost a year. And then she's now working for us as a consultant almost full time and leading our sales efforts. And it's made such a difference bringing in someone who's so much skilled and expert in their area. And this is an advice that I would give to entrepreneurs. Like, the sooner you can make that hired skill, someone who's been down that road before, whatever area it is, whether it's marketing, sales, finance, operations, if you are not skilled in that area, then you need to hire someone who is an expert.
Yeah.
Don't hire someone that you need to train up in that area because you don't have the knowledge in that area as well.
Very, very true. I think for us, seeing that 2023, applying those lessons and seeing the business turn around to a point that where it is now, where it's like in the best shape it's ever been. But for me, the other real key was you don't understand how closely you need to watch expenses as a business owner, because it's very easy. It's interesting, and probably part of this was because personally you and I have never really used a budget, right? We've just followed some very simple principles. But when you get into business, whatever you've been using personally doesn't work. Like you need to make sure that you are really financially planning, having a budget, being like, how much should I be spending in this area of my business and all this stuff. And once we right-size that, and now we have the business where it is now, we saw the complete opposite of that, because a lot of people measure growth in heads, and true growth of a company is only evident in your profit at the bottom. That is the true measure of growth in a company.
Profit and cash in the bank.
Cash in the bank. That's true too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So some big lessons in 2022, and then 2023 was really executing on what we had learned from 2022. And so we made some really hard decisions once again, and we focused on what we knew we needed to do. You and I started doubling down on sales. I had become very hands-off with clients, and I was more on operations. Yeah. And I started working with our clients again, and you started getting hands-on even more again. So what do you think that was that made us make some of those decisions to pivot?
I think it really comes down to systems, right? And they say a business is a system, and for us, we were in a place where we were like, hey, we didn't have some of the foundations right. Let's fix the foundations. And we already know that you and I are good at sales. Like, we were able to bootstrap this thing just based on our own selling efforts.
Yeah.
But what can be very difficult sometimes as an entrepreneur is transferring your way of doing things to other people. Like, people always tell me, Dave, you're a good salesperson, but I don't have no specific method for what I do. It's a mixture of psychology, sales things that I've learned over the years, and understanding the recruitment industry that we're in right now. And these are things that oftentimes an amateur salesperson isn't thinking about. They're not thinking about, like, what does that person's body language mean? Like, they don't think about these type of things, because all they're thinking about is, I need to feed myself and I need to get a deal. So it's a very different dynamic, for sure.
Yeah. So 2023, we make some hard decisions. We're executing more, and we're really working on the foundations. And taking what we've learned and applying it. And here we are halfway through 2024. We're having our best year ever in the business.
Yes.
We have the highest revenue we've ever had. We have the most profitability we've ever had. And we're only 6 months into the business. And now it's really looking at, okay, how do we, again, reinvest in the business and make some really strategic moves to grow right now. And it's such an interesting time, though, in the staffing world, because if you look at IT staffing, I mean, technically it's in a recession, according to the American Staffing Association, according to TechServe, right?
Yeah, TechServe, yeah.
TechServe, that we are in a recession when it comes to IT staffing. And the market's really challenging because there are some really great candidates on the market that have been on the market maybe longer than they used to. Longer than they're used to being on the market. So what do you think is happening in staffing right now?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was talking about this morning, and I think one of the key issues that we're having is, yes, there are some great people that I'm noticing are on the market a lot longer than previously. But we also, in 2021, we had a boom in hiring across the board, right? It's funny, it wasn't just like inflation happening with like your groceries and real estate and all this stuff. It happened in the hiring market too.
Yeah.
There were like, we had recruiters taken from us that were getting like crazy salaries from Amazon and stuff like that. And the deal is that a bunch of people overhired. It was so easy to get a job in 2021 because we came out of the recession and all of a sudden people had money to spend again. They're like, oh, we cut and we downsized and we were worried about COVID and all this stuff. And now here we are, and we need to get heads in really quick. And now here we are in 2024. And you know, if you were looking for a job in 2021, it was easy to find one. Yeah, you had 4, 5, 6 offers. Now in 2024, you're not going to get the same results with the amount of effort that you put in 2021. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. They're in this place where they're looking for a job and they're like, oh, you know, I sent my resume to 4 places, you know, I'm good, I should be fine. And then they're sitting on the market. And this is one of the biggest issues even entrepreneurs have, right? We underestimate the amount of effort that it takes to accomplish a given goal. And that is what's happening, I think, to a lot of people in the job market right now. They don't realize this is a different market. You need to apply a lot. You need to be networking with a lot. You should be working with recruiters that are skilled and actually provide value to you and are connected to great companies. Like, it is not 2021.
I think the biggest thing that you said is it's all about your network. I mean, in so many things, from business to you getting a job to you getting a new client, it's all about your network. And right now, candidates really need to focus on their network and working with someone who specializes in whatever type of job that they want. You need to work with a recruiter who specializes in that industry. And that's why we started our company, because we are experts in placing people in the Adobe Experience Manager space and all of the Adobe Marketing Cloud now. And that's where you started your career. So how did this all happen? How did Adobe become such a big thing?
Well, this is what's so interesting in tech staffing. Typically, people think when you're sitting in the seat, either as a salesperson, as a recruiter, or as I did the whole job. I did both sides of the job. I would go pull a job and then go find the candidate to fill it. It's not like that anymore. We're too laser focused and scatterbrained that we can't do that many things nowadays, which is really interesting. And that's a topic for another story.
So how did you find out about Adobe and really become an expert in this area?
So I think a lot of people, when they're in this space, they think that the more jobs they have to work on, the more opportunities, the more markets that they're in, the more success that they're going to have. But what I have found, and in my own experience, is when you niche down and you really become an expert at one particular thing, that's where you become valuable. Because if you're, you know, like if you have a accountant that has way more experience than someone else, they're going to be better at what they're doing. And it's the same thing with recruiting. So when you can niche down, and this is what happened for me. You mentioned the Adobe space. I remember I was sitting across from a client at JP Morgan Chase. We're having lunch. And he looks at me and he says, Dave, can you find someone with CQ experience? Never heard of it, okay? This is what Adobe Experience Manager was called back then. They had bought a company called Daysoft, where they had a product called CQ, and now they had Adobe CQ. And they've reiterated the name many times since then. But the point was, I was sitting across from him, I never heard of this ever. But I looked him in the eye. I was like, of course I can find that. So I went back to our database and I look in the database. Nobody was CQ. I go on LinkedIn. There's about 5 people that have this experience at this time. So I just do what I know to do. I start calling them up, asking for referrals, talking to these people. And I noticed 3 things everybody's saying. This is the next big thing. They make a lot of money. And clearly they're extremely hard to find. And that's when it clicked for me. If a market has those 3 things, high demand, hard to find, and they make a lot of money, there is an opportunity there. And I went to my management and I was like, I want to pursue this. And they're like, fine, go ahead. And I started pursuing this, and all of a sudden we're starting to get opportunities outside of banks, because when I started at this, I placed the people that built the trading systems in the banks. And it just so happened that this first client asking for CQ was a bank, but now all of a sudden I'm finding clients that are outside of banks. And this led me to an opportunity that allowed me to start another division in that company, become a partner in it, and work my way up in that company before finally starting Focus GTS. And when we started Focus, it was obvious choice for us to focus on niche markets, and that's why we picked MarTech, which we already knew really well, and AI, which you can't really listen to any technologist talk about anything nowadays without them saying AI 15, 20 times. So we talked a little bit about the past of Focus GTS. We talked about where we're at now. We talked about staffing industry and what we're seeing are some current trends. Where do you think the future of this is going, especially with AI and its impacts in technology?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ways that AI is going to impact specifically the staffing industry is when it comes to sourcing candidates. Because with what's happening with technology is that we're going to be able to automate all these processes, automate applicant tracking systems to be able to find the best candidates automatically without someone having to go through all of that data. Now, where does a recruiter come into this process? It comes to the human part and doing the interview process. But even more beyond that, what we've been talking about and why we started our company is working with a specialist. Because if you have your general HR person, and nothing against them, or a general staffing agency that doesn't specialize in a niche area of technology that you are currently hiring for, they are not going to be able to speak the language of the candidate. And in a candidate-driven market, you need to be able to recruit this top talent, speak their language, hit them with an interesting message, call them up, be able to sell the opportunity. And if you know nothing about a technology, then how are you going to sell that? And that's why we started our company, to really be experts in the MarTech space, in the Adobe Marketing Cloud, in the AI space. When we first started, as we mentioned, that we had started working with a director of AI, that was one of the biggest opportunities for us to really get to understand that space. We ended up building out their entire data science team. We placed over 48 people on that team and really helped them achieve their goals when it came to hiring in this niche area. Because if they would have worked with a general recruiter to try to find this really hard to find talent, it would have taken them, can't even imagine how much longer. So that's what is so important when you look at a staffing partner, is that you're looking at someone. Don't hire us for your general IT roles, right? No. That's not what we're here for. If you are looking for someone in the Adobe Marketing Cloud and you need to hire them fast, you've been in this space 13 years. How quickly can you find someone?
Immediately.
Exactly. And that's why our business, our guarantee is within 24 to 48 hours, you're going to have candidates that you want to interview.
Yeah.
And that is so important, that we're not just sending you candidates, we're sending you candidates you want to interview. How are we able to do that? Because of our network. And that's what we've been talking about. And even through entrepreneurship, business, sales, you need a network. And that's what we built with our business. And that's what makes our company so unique, is a network of talent within the MarTech space, within the AI and data science space, that we know these people. We know how to find them, we know how to recruit them, and we know how to get them interested in the role. That if you are not the top players in this space and you're trying to recruit someone, you better have a recruiter that knows how to get them interested in your company.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like, if you were to describe it, you see these like nice European cars, and if you bring one of those to a regular mechanic, they're like, I can't work on this. I wish recruitment was so honest, right?
Yeah.
But, instead you have people that are like, no, I can work on this, and then it ends up actually causing damage to the car because they don't know what they're doing.
I think that's why recruitment gets such a bad rap, is because they overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can help with that. Oh yeah, we can take on your AEM roles. Yeah, we know how to find those people. But if you haven't filled those roles before and you don't have the pipeline of talent, you're not going to have the same experience, and neither is your candidate. And your staffing agent is your first experience for the candidate of your company and your company culture. So you want to align yourself with someone who knows the market of what you're hiring for.
I think you said that so well, and it's so key. It is the first experience that you have, and you do not want, when you're fighting for this talent, like when you are dealing with something that's in high demand and niche, and I would say it's any type of technology where there's just more demand, a lot more demand for the talent than there is for the talent that's available, you're going to struggle so hard if you go to that generalist. And here's the other thing. A lot of times, sometimes like hiring managers don't even know exactly what they want. They don't know how to price a position. You know, they're like, oh, it's kind of similar to this other thing. But at the end of the day, if you're working with a generalist, again, they're not going to be able to give you any advice on that. They're just like, oh, tell me what you need and I'm going to go find it, rather than being able to consult with you and be like, well, have you considered this? Oh, you know, it's interesting. You're going to really struggle finding people with that skill set to come on site in Topeka, Kansas, you know, or whatever the location is. You need somebody that understands it, and you need to be able to tell, is this a niche skill or is it not a niche skill? Because you cannot keep treating those two things as the same. They're very different.
Yeah, you need a strategic partner that can advise you, not just be an order taker. And that's so important in niche staffing, is to be able to advise. And I'm actually dealing with a client right now that I'm going to have a hard conversation with, because they're hiring a very niche talent, and their team who's doing the interview actually doesn't have the experience in that technology. And so we've interviewed over 12 candidates, or they've interviewed over 12 candidates, and they're still not sure what they're looking for. And so sometimes even the team in these niche areas, you have to have a really great interview process as well. So yes, you can have all of the great talent. I mean, they have interviewed some of the best people within this Adobe space, and they're not making a hire because their team doesn't know what they're looking for. So, and I'm able to pick that up as an expert and pick up the disconnect, and now advise them as a strategic partner and help them see that there's a process that we can make, and how can we make this better versus just being an order taker and sending them unlimited candidates. Well, one, there's not unlimited candidates, and two, to be able to help them have a really great experience, because they're missing out on some really great talent. So I think that's so important, is that you're looking for a strategic partner in these opportunities.
And in recruiting in general, I think it's such an important skill. Even if you are the generalist recruiter, go still be a strategic partner for them, because there's things that you encounter that you don't always realize, and you do have to have some of those hard conversations like you just mentioned. They don't know exactly what they're looking for. That's a difficult thing to call somebody out on. Super difficult. Another example is, you know, and I talk about this sometimes, it's that what's the percentage of employees that are disengaged at work? You think just because they hire people that they're less? It's like, it doesn't matter what position on the ladder you're in. It's the same percentage of people that are disengaged. So you can get managers that you're dealing with that, you know, they're disengaged. They love the opportunity to get away from the day job that they hate, to talk to some candidate and then reject him because it gives them this like rush of power. Like, this type of stuff actually happens.
Yeah.
And if you're not a strategic partner, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time with people that don't value you, and you're going to end up not fulfilled yourself and feeling burnt out yourself, because you are selling yourself short. You're not having those hard conversations, and you're trying to be a jack of all trades. And we know what they say about those people. They are the master of none.
And like you talked about too, is like being a strategic partner. And not only do you want to look for a recruitment partner who is niche and specialty in your area, it's also, as someone in the staffing industry, we want to have an ideal client. And that's why we value clients who are decisive decision makers, who value partnership, who hire at least 10 plus contractors a year. That is what we're looking for when we're looking at different clients, so that we can align ourselves with who we can best serve.
And imagine, if you're hiring 10 contractors a year, that's a lot, right? And if you're the average company, it takes 64 days to hire someone. It doesn't matter if they're a contractor full time. So you got 64 times 10, that's 640 days, people. If you're doing it one at a time, that's more than a year.
Yeah.
Imagine having a partner that can turn around those in 24 to 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours. That's taking it down from 640 days to 60.
Okay, let's talk about the current market, because we said how it is, you know, like it's harder for candidates to find a job. What about clients? What's happening with clients right now? So we talked a lot about the market and what's happening when it comes to candidates, but what would you say from the hiring perspective? Like, what are the challenges that managers are facing right now?
I think the biggest challenge, at least that I'm hearing across the board from a lot of managers right now, is that they're getting a lot of budget restraints. And they need more people, but we live in this world where Wall Street always wants to see better numbers every single year, and sometimes you can't always produce a better product. So sometimes you have to get those better numbers by finagling things, by making cuts, by being really tight on your budget. And this makes it difficult for people, but there's also constant throwing out of, there's economic uncertainty right now, and there are different things. You know, we're in a presidential year, we got AI coming up, that everybody's like, how's this going to affect the economy? How's this going to affect jobs? Some people are saying that it's actually starting to. So there's just a lot of factors right now that are going on. But we're also going to have a massive push with AI that is going to, I think, increase tech staffing tremendously. And one of the ways in which I talk about it is Inflection AI. They came out with this product called Devin. That's your first AI coder. And I've talked to different people about this, and a lot of people are saying like, hey, you know, it doesn't hold a candle to an actual individual. But where I see this as an opportunity is, you know, if you have an idea for an app right now, you have to go and you have to hire a team, and it's probably going to cost you $50,000 to go and get a minimum viable product for that app. But if you have a software program that can code the app for you, and you can talk to it in natural language and say, hey, I want an app like this, it's going to be this color, this is what it's going to do, it's going to have these buttons, and you just tell it what it is, and boom, you have that product. It is a lot less work to iterate an idea and see if the market is actually interested in it. And what this means is that a lot more ideas are going to get vetted, and a lot more things are going to go through, and then it's going to mean new companies and new opportunities for a lot of people that weren't there before. And that is where I think the tech staffing is going to come out of where it is in a recession right now and put us into a much better place.
And I think when you look at niche IT staffing in our areas, specifically with an AI, every company is talking about it. If you look at the statistics, I think 90% of companies are integrating some sort of AI into their business. Us included, of course. And when you look at what does that mean for the demand of talent? So, I mean, even Mark Zuckerberg is recruiting for AI talent. If he's getting involved, the market is going to be cutthroat when it comes to AI talent. I think the biggest challenge that managers are facing and companies, especially at these larger organizations, is, of course, I mean, the politics that are involved, but the strategy. There is a lack of strategy when it comes to integrating AI into their business. And so I think there's a huge opportunity on the marketplace for people to advise within the AI space, to talk about how to strategically build your teams, which is something that we've been doing since we launched our company. Yeah. So being able to have a strategic advisor on how to actually build these teams and organizations, because right now this is one of the messiest areas that I'm seeing in hiring, is that they just want to hire one random data scientist, but they forgot someone's got to clean all the data before that, which is not a data scientist role, that's data engineering and everything before that. So you have to look at the whole approach and having the foundations of clean data. And this is just something that a lot of companies haven't thought through the entire process. So I think if you're a hiring manager and you're in this space, well, first you got to get your leadership on board on your strategy. You have to have them bought into what you're doing. And what do they want to see? They want to see ROI immediately. How is this technology going to generate me revenue? So you need to be able to show that as you're putting your cases together, especially when it comes to hiring. How is this hire actually going to make you more money than be an investment versus a cost? And that's something that I think is going to be more and more of a discussion in the marketplace when it comes to hiring AI talent.
And what I think is so a perfect way to land this plane right now is, you know, AI is going to impact the economy, hiring, recruit, like every area of our lives is going to be permeated by AI. So, you know, this was our first episode of this, but I think what's going to be really interesting is as we bring on some experts in AI and really getting their opinion from people that are in the weeds of this stuff, that are touching the technology, that are seeing some of the impacts that it's having. You know, we see so much and, you know, we utilize a lot of these technologies, but actually the people that are touching it, those are the people that I think can bring some of the best insights. So I think this was an amazing conversation, and I'm looking forward to having more of them with you and other people in this space.
All right, that concludes the first episode of our conversation when it comes to recruiting, technology, AI, and everything in the marketplace. So stay tuned to our next conversation coming soon. Make sure to subscribe.
And like.
Comment below.